my name is Katie. I'm a librarian at the Lexington Public Library, and this is the Kentucky Cookbook Review. I have 5 cookbooks that I'm going to give a brief review over. These cookbooks are all available through the library's Libby app, or also we do have print copies of those that you can place a hold on to pick up at one of the locations. To start with, the first cookbook that I'm going to give a brief review on is Tasting Kentucky by Maggie Green, and she is a Kentucky food writer. So this cookbook involves recipes from restaurants across the Bluegrass. And the foreword is by our very own Chef Wita from here in Lexington. So this cookbook is split up into your regular sections. It's got breakfast and brunch recipes, apps and snacks, salads, soups, main dishes and desserts, and it even has a few drink recipes, especially made with bourbon. This cookbook is really easy to read. The recipes are all straightforward, and it's nice that you are able to cook some of your favorites from recipes from restaurants that you've been to. For example, there's bacon cheddar scones that you can get from Windy Corner. Also bourbon mashed potatoes, beer cheese mac and cheese, just some really interesting recipes. And one of the great things about this cookbook is that there is a picture for every single finished product. I don't know about you, but I really love having pictures of what the final product's gonna look like. And this cookbook, if that's what you like, this is for you. All right, the second cookbook is The Classic Kentucky Meals by Rona Roberts. This cookbook is a little different than your standard cookbook, as the sections are by 6 different meals as opposed to just breakfast dishes, lunch dishes. It's all combined into one meal together, like for a main dish, a side dish, dessert, drink, etc. So there's 6 different meals in this book, and there's an everyday menu for the recipes, and then there's also a dressed up menu. So it has similar recipes, but some of them are a little bit fancier for a bigger event or something like that. There is a bonus section also, and it talks about pasta, but there's not any recipes to go along with the pasta. It just makes some suggestions of some ways that you could make pasta a little fancier. Some examples of the meal titles that they have are Lovin' on a Chicken and Its Friends, Putting the Kentucky in Burgers, Mushrooms, and Dogs. So as you can see, there's a Kentucky theme surrounding these meals. There is a lot of history and additional information in this cookbook, so if you like to read cookbooks, this would be a good one for you to read. And it also has a lot of color photos, but it doesn't have a color photo for everything. This book is okay overall. It's just a little bit harder to navigate since, as I mentioned, it's bunched together as meals and not different types of food items. This book is Kentucky Cooks by Linda Allison Lewis, and this is a compilation of favorite recipes from Kentucky Living magazine. The biggest bummer for me about this cookbook is there's no photos. The recipes are very easy to follow and straightforward. The recipes aren't listed in the table of contents, but at the beginning of the chapter, which is a little frustrating if you're trying to find something. You have to flip to the section. But this again is like a standard cookbook, and it has apps and snacks, soups and salads, breads, etc. in their own section. This does have a lot of recipes in it, and they are pretty standard, straightforward Kentucky things. For example, cheddar bread, chive biscuits, salmon patties, scallop corn, and also a couple of interesting fun things like strawberry soup or pretzel salad. Overall, this cookbook is okay and pretty straightforward, and I would say it might be good for a beginning cook, except that there's no photos. This next cookbook is a little different, as it is a cookbook about the South, not just Kentucky. It is The New Vegetarian South by Jennifer Brule. It contains vegetarian and vegan twists on Southern favorites. It is a pretty straightforward standard cookbook. I will say that some of the recipes do need a little bit of different ingredients because you're trying to substitute the meat flavor or texture, but overall it's pretty easy and straightforward. This cookbook also at the beginning gives advice on how to amp up umami meatness in meat-free recipes, and gives instructions on how to make tofu and other to use other meat substitutes such as jackfruit or lentils. This is a standard cookbook that goes with appetizers, breakfast, lunch, etc. There are very brief descriptions and comments before each recipe to let you know if something's going to be a little different or a little difficult. And I personally have tried to make the crab cakes in the Nashville hot chicken, which made a cauliflower out of this book, and they both turned out very well. It just did take a little bit of extra hunting for a few ingredients like hearts of palm, which are available at Kroger, just not something that you usually think to purchase. The only one thing about this cookbook that's a little bit of a bummer is it doesn't have any desserts, but you don't need to make desserts vegetarian so most of the time, so it does make sense that they're not in this book. And the final cookbook in the Kentucky Cookbook Review is Kentucky Sweets by Sarah Baird. Now, I know a lot of people like to read cookbooks, and I mentioned that one earlier was a good to read, but this definitely is for somebody that is interested in the history of Kentucky cooking or just reading cookbooks in general, because this one has a lot of background on recipes and ingredients and history of the recipes or in the region. There's a lot of great illustrations, and there's also some cartoons to go around along with some of the recipes. And it does include special tips for certain recipes. So for example, one of the tips is when is the best time to pick the berries for a blackberry cobbler, or how to cut a cushaw, for example. This has only desserts, fruits and nuts, Derby favorites, chocolate and caramel, celebration sweets, and confections and candy. There are quite a few bourbon related recipes in this cookbook, including bourbon balls, and it is a great recipe if you are if you are interested in the history of any type of dessert recipe that are famous from Kentucky. So I hope you enjoyed the Kentucky Cookbook Review, and be sure to check these cookbooks out with your Lexington Public Library card.